the legal aspect. Discrimination is already illegal and prohibited under federal law, so you shouldn't be doing it, or the airlines shouldn't be doing it. That being said, your core values that you state are that you want to maximize profits, understandably so. You want to reduce regulations. Who can blame you? And the other one is customer safety. There's nothing wrong with any of those. The trouble happens, though, whenever you're sacrificing one to achieve the other. Whenever you're so concerned with maximizing profits that you ignore customer safety, as with the example of Owen, and cramming more people onto the flight, but not able to get them off. That 90 seconds isn't a suggestion, but a requirement. All right? And so now recommendations. What are some ways you can specifically tackle racial discrimination? Well, one is you can be honest whenever you mess up. And whenever these types of things happen and make it to the public, you can own up to it. Jump out ahead of it, because now it's a PR battle. And you need to do more than just save face by apologizing, but you need to take some substantial steps to combat it. One of them, we believe, is limiting the discretion of the pilot. We believe that it's a very tight line to walk in terms of letting the pilot be the only one who determines who can board and who cannot board a flight. Instead, we recommend that in the instance of a confrontation, we're trying to figure out who flies and who stays behind, you contact the floor supervisor for that airline. That way, they're able to come out, someone who the pilot actually answers to and is accountable to, as opposed to letting the individual bias of that pilot affect the whole airline. You're letting one individual in his decision affect the perception of an entire company. So we've touched on 4 ethical issues, okay? The first being overbooking. The second, cram seating. Third, false advertising. And the fourth, racial discrimination. Now with overbooking, we know that when someone shows up, they have a ticket, they have plans, they have a place to be. And you tell them at the last minute, you're not flying today. That is not treating them with the respect that they deserve, with the dignity that they are due. In terms of cramped seating, whenever you shrink the size of seats, but jack up the price for that seat, whenever you cram more people onto an airline, but can't evacuate them in time to save their lives, you are not treating them with the justice that they deserve. Whenever you are advertising ticket prices, and you are advertising a price that is too good to be true, a bait and switch tactic, telling the customer that it's $59, but really, with your fingers crossed behind your back, you know it's going to cost them $200. That is not true. That is not being honest with them, and that is not treating them with the respect that they deserve. And fourthly, with racial discrimination, whenever you decide who can fly and who can't fly on an airline just based on the color of their skin or their race, you are not treating them with the respect that they are due. Simply put, we know that Airlines for America has the ability to lobby for industry-wide standards. We want you to take seriously our recommendations, to implement them, so that your industry, who you represent, is able to continue to become a force for good. Thanks so much. We're happy to come here and speak with you, and we hope to follow up with you soon.
Well, thank you. I have a couple of questions. These are businesses. This is not summer camp. So a couple of people get bumped off a flight. There are other flights. They're going to get to their destination. Why is that an ethical problem?
Well, I think it comes to be an ethical problem, especially when the instance where people are denied boarding, especially when the instance like the United flight, when they actually get on the flight. We feel that violates the respect that they are due, because you're expected to go to this place, you're getting on the plane ready to go, but then you're asked to leave. We don't feel that that's quite an ethical standpoint that these companies want to take for their best interest, and especially with the denied boarding part, we don't feel that that's right in terms of the ethical aspect.
And it's not like they just found out that this flight is going to be overbooked last minute. They're waiting for these people to get onto the plane before they take action to address it.
They're offering a lot of money. I flew out here from Los Angeles on Monday, and the flight before mine, they offered people $500 to give up their seat. It's a pretty good deal.
But the instances where the opportunity cost isn't there, this doctor had patients to see in the morning. He has work to do, but we pick you. You have to get off this plane. Well, I don't care how much money you offer me. I don't want to go. And that's where we feel that that infringes on, the respect that they are due.
Thank you for your presentation. As you were going through the various categories, what came to mind for me was the training requirements that are required. Southwest is a huge airline that's known for customer service. They train all of their individuals pretty thoroughly from start to finish, and that those do meet all the training and development regulations. So in terms of how might they approach a customer and share with them that they have to deboard. So what occurred for me is that if the airlines are meeting and continually training their employees to speak with dignity and to, for example, work with the floor manager to say, can you work with the pilot to figure out who may have to deboard and not deboard, and this is the communication message. What's unethical about that? So they're following their talking points, their training guidelines, they're probably following a script to some degree. Can you share a little bit more about where they might be falling short in training and development of their employees?
So in regards to training and development, there's always more that we can do as an industry. So we can't just stop at the bare minimum or the requirements that we need to meet the needs of the individuals that we're serving. So in regards to training, we can continue to train our employees and make them as frequent as possible to make sure that they're aware of what's going on and what they're expected to do within their roles. And then in regards to what's unethical about what they're doing right now is truly the behavior and mindset of how they're dealing with customers, as we need to make sure that we are a customer-centric company that are putting the needs of our customers first and being mindful of different biases that may occur over time and making sure that we make their traveling as smooth and as efficiently as possible.
And if I could add, it's never okay to deboard someone based on race, right? So that was the discrimination spec. And so making sure that we do everything possible to even avoid the illusion or the optics that the reason someone is being deboarded is not because of their race is very important. And that's difficult because, we're not saying that you have no right to ever deboard an African American individual. We understand why the policy is there, and so that's to protect the airlines themselves from having, belligerent people get on the plane. We understand that. The trouble is, though, if there is not a reason for someone to get off the plane, there needs to be really careful steps taken so that the people getting off are understand why, and feel that they were treated with a certain level of respect that we feel they're due.
To add to that also is that in doing research around the various training and development above the requirements that are needed, as someone who partners with the airline industry, I would say that the way that we check in with various airline companies is to say, like, are you following these regulations? Are you training your pilots on unconscious bias? Are you training your customer service members on how to approach a difficult situation? And as an external party, that's probably the best that Airlines for America can do, as you're interacting with multiple airline corporations. And so I appreciate the feedback in terms of how we can continue to help strengthen the way that training happens.
For me, I don't really have any questions, but I'm a commercial aviation major myself, so when you guys brought this topic up, I found it very, very interesting, some of the things you went over. It shows the amount of effort and the preparation you guys have put into it was very well put together. I like some of the suggestions, especially the idea of saying taking it out of the pilot's hands. But being a pilot, I feel like it should ultimately be up to the pilot because he's responsible for the whole flight safety. That was one of the things right now.
Sure, and understandably so. And that's why we don't want to take it totally out of his hands, but we just don't want the decision to be only his. We want him to at least have to check in, and that way someone above him is responsible for that decision, and they're talking about it together, as opposed to that individual just coming and telling the pilot what to do. We want them to have a conversation.
Our member companies, these airlines, only make money if two things happen. Planes are full and planes are in the air. Studies show that to really make money, they have to be flying 18 hours a day. It means quick turnarounds on the ground, get people off the plane, get their luggage off the plane, get the next set of folks on, get back up in the air. Aren't you going to just inhibit the ability of these companies to make money and actually force them out of business with these suggestions?
Well, it may hurt the bottom line if they make the seats a little bigger and they can't sell as many tickets, but if you're putting your customers' lives at risk when they're flying, we feel that's a greater cause than the damage that may happen to the bottom line.
And I think I'd push back that there is going to be damage to the bottom line, because I think what is going to be more damaging is when Congress comes in and tries to regulate your industry. What we're trying to do is proactively prevent that from happening. And by doing so, yes, we're going to tighten up your internal rules, hopefully, and you'll be able to tell the airlines. But what is really going to hurt the bottom line is whenever they're acting carelessly, Congress comes in and says everyone's getting a luxury extra wide seat, and now we have a lot less seats on the plane. And so I think that's really the opposite of your view.
And just to add to it a little bit, we're in the days of social media, where everything gets out, and that was especially prevalent in the United's case, where 24 hours later, everybody and their mother knows that this guy was dragged off the plane.
Even the mother not on social media.
But people don't exactly realize that 3 weeks later, United lost $900 million in market cap space, which can have dramatic impact financially on a company for just this one instance, because they're not in correlation with the standards that we think that they should have.
And they could have offered another so they offered money, tried to get volunteers, but then after they didn't get enough, they just picked him, as opposed to trying to incentivize someone by raising the amount they were offering. So they chose that 900 over a couple dollars. I mean, should have been the opposite.
Now, I have seen some changes come through that. You might have seen it on social media. There was a passenger who was given $10,000 to vacate a seat. So United has made a couple of changes with that. And I believe it's United Airlines that has all the issues with the pets passing away.
Yeah, they did.
With that Boston Terrier.
Yeah. But once again, that's if you look at the situation, that dog was required to fly in the what is that?
Overhead?
Yeah, the overhead.
Yeah.
The people who are in charge of that plane need to use more common sense than expect to put a living animal in a closed space like that. And so that's their own fault and hopefully a learning experience, but it's going to cost them a lot of money to learn that lesson.
Oh yeah. A lot of people are canceling their memberships with United. You're seeing the whole cancel United card and get rid of United.
So I think the focus here is in the wrong direction. They're focusing on one person out of 300 passengers. What about the 299 who are inconvenienced when I make a fuss on the plane and it takes 15 minutes for them to get me off the plane because I'm making a fuss? What about the 299?
Well, I would just answer that they're not going to have this fuss if this instance doesn't occur in the first place. And by giving these recommendations, we feel that one person won't be there to have these other 300 people, make a fuss about that.
Yeah, so if we use the number 300 people are flying, and Bill said that, the biggest part of his recommendation was to handle it before they got on the plane. Perhaps those 300 people aren't even seeing what's happening in their ability to resolve this issue. If they seek out the person who they've overbooked and isn't able to get on the flight, don't wait till they're walking onto the flight to tell them that. You got to call their name over the intercom. How many people have been in an airport and we've heard them say, "Would Mr. and Mrs. Jones please report to the gate?" That's probably because they're late. But maybe we should also be calling those people who aren't going to fly to let them know. Whenever you book a reservation, you put your phone number in. They could give you a call and let you know, "Mr. and Mrs. Jones, we're not able to fly you today. You were booked with an overbooked ticket. We'd be happy to change your reservation. If you stay on the line, we'll transfer you to our ticket master."
I think that happens. I mean, to get here, I had a very interestingly enough, a situation on Southwest Airlines myself, where they were overbooked, and there was a lady sitting behind me who was part of an ongoing flight, so she just stayed in seat while they docked in, where did we stop, Baltimore? And the Southwest agent came on board and said, you need to deboard. And she said, well, I have a confirmed reservation, I'm trying to get to Boston, I have an important engagement, whatnot. And there was another man who was on standby who also had a confirmed reservation because it was overbooked. And I'm sitting there like, now I'm 45 minutes behind, and there was this whole argument going on the plane, and people were not feeling good about it. But in that moment, I also thought, well, I'm really glad that they're being strict with this passenger, and they're saying we're following regulations, we have guidelines around how we deal with overbooking and so on. And so I can understand where you're coming from in terms of that probably wasn't a good experience for that lady who had to deboard. However, I agree with my fellow companion here to say that everybody else was inconvenienced on that plane, and we can't make everybody happy. So if 299 customers are happy, one's not, we're a business, we're gonna continue to move forward. I mean, as a business, would you agree that would you keep 299 customers happy and on time to get to their destination, or let this one person know that they need to make change?
Now, yeah, we would rather 299 happy and one unhappy than the other way around. But what Billy was really pointing out was these are situations that should have been handled prior to her getting on the plane. They should have been stopped her at the gate, let him in, had someone hold her at the gate, the plane could have taken off. So no matter how unhappy she was, the 300 people on the plane were happy.
Right.
So then you just have one unhappy 300, and that's, I guess it goes back to the training where if the employees can handle the situation a little bit better.
But I would say that in a perfect world, yes, one person would be unhappy, 299 wouldn't be, or would be. But I think if you'd have looked past that lady, you'd have probably seen 15 to 20 phones capturing that moment if it was really that big a deal. And so now, whenever they're sharing it with their friends or putting it on social media, it's not just that one lady that is unhappy. Because what everyone at home sitting on the phone is seeing is they're seeing an airport official or an airline official treating this person hopefully with respect. We hope so. But now they associate, Southwest, they're booting people off, and so I think it's bigger than just that one person. But it's what reach on social media does it, and that's why you have to be very careful. And we have to create, and we hope that you'll implement some sort of public and positive social media campaign.
Okay,
Think about that.
we are out of time in character, so take a deep breath, relax, the hard part is over. We'll step out of character as well and back into our normal roles.
Great job.
You were poised, none of our questions threw you, so you obviously prepared well. I thought your use of the slides was terrific, because you never turned your back on the audience to look at the slides. You knew your material. So congratulations. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When you get to the next round, the 10-minute presentations, really focus on the ethical aspects of it. Okay?
Great job. Really enjoyed hearing all of your points of view and perspectives. I agree. We didn't seem to shake you. We were trying to be a little rough and saying, what do we do about profit margin that happens in boardrooms? And bottom line is important for many corporations. I would just say when you get into your 10-minute presentation, I would physically break up a little bit, maybe use the room a little bit more in your favor. So there's a couple times where I was glancing over and I was like, what was that percentage? So just, use your physical space really well. So if you're stepping forward or you're stepping forward to present, that will also happen to you when you go out into the working world and do other things. You just have to use your space in a way that engages the audience. So kind of loosen up a little bit and kind of re-engage. But I really enjoyed all of your points of view. I enjoyed being, I keep forgetting my name. Airline coordinator. Yeah, that was really cool. So thank you for assigning us that role. And great presentation overall.
Thank you.
I don't think I can add much to what these guys have already said, but I enjoyed it a lot. You guys did a very, very good job, and like they were mentioning, I never saw anybody turning back to glance at the slide. You guys put the preparation into it. Good job.
Thank you.
Did you have fun?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome.
Just one quick question on the side note. With that flight with Dr. David Dow, when he was taken off that plane, did United do anything with the remaining passengers on the plane to compensate him for some way the other 299?
I don't know that.
I feel like I do remember seeing that, but I'm not 100% sure on reading on that. I don't remember anything specifically coming up on what they did with those passengers, so I'm not completely sure.
Why are you going to say you were on a flight?
No.
You got to check.
To a pilot, answer that.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Sophomore.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you again.
Yep.
Thank
All
you.
of us. Thank you.
All sophomores?
Thank you so much.